Hey, everybody, this is Charles Dobbins, and welcome to this week's podcast, which is a very new thing that we're going to do. It's election period, and I wanted to kind of shake it up a little bit. So I'm going to ask a very good friend of mine who's an expert in all of this to come on every so often just to share with us what's happening on Capitol Hill, kind of a little shakeup in the multifamily space. So on this version of the Multifamily Investing Academy podcast, we are going to have my dear friend, Barry Hutchison, talk to us as what I'm probably going to call the voices from the Hill. And if you have any questions about it, shoot them over to me, and I'll make sure that we get them answered next time. But Barry, welcome to my show, man.
Charles, thank you. I'm excited to participate in this. You started by, what's happening on the Hill. This could be a very short conversation.
That would be good for the country. That would be so good for the country.
But I am happy to add whatever I can add to the dialogue. There are a lot of historical things, and we can delve into some of those issues that never happened on the Hill before.
All right. Well, so, let's kind of give everybody a little bit of a background so they know that, I think we were together this weekend, and I think we did some math, and we came up that we have been friends for 41 years right now, which, as most of my listeners know, I'm 72 years old. So that means that you and I met when I was 31, which would have made me the oldest freshman at Boston College. I think that's about right. It was a little creepy, hanging out.
Now I know how you beat me this weekend. Yes,
exactly.
Your creative math. Yes.
You were the one doing the math, pal, and the scorecard, which I loved how you had us ahead of the youngsters by 2 strokes, on the 18th green until you decided that your pencil had an eraser, which bothered our game. But I like to say I'm 72, so I can get closer and closer to hitting my age, scoring my age. But all right, so I like to say that that all of your successes are attributable to me. I am the reason. Yeah, and allow me to walk you through your pedigree, and you tell me where I'm wrong. So you were in my wedding. You were in my wedding party, where you happened to meet a very good friend of mine, who was on the fringes, sort of a congressional campaign in the Middlesex County race, and
Massachusetts 5, we would call that. That's the 5th congressional district in Massachusetts. Yep.
And it was Chet Atkins was the Democrat, and he was running against a guy who's I don't think he's ever done anything since then. But you met Michael, and Michael said, "Yeah, I got a friend who needs like a campaign manager, and maybe you might want to talk to him." And you were fresh out of college. You were, I don't remember what you were doing at that time, but you jumped on this chance to run to be the campaign manager for this guy against a very solidly entrenched Democrat in a solidly entrenched Democratic district, and you brought him within 2 points of winning or something like that. Chet Atkins.
That was actually we were ahead in September, and then in October, which happens a lot in campaigns.
Yeah,
is we started leaking some oil, and the floodgates opened, and we ended up losing 52-48 in a close race. Chet Atkins was the chairman of the Democratic Party of Massachusetts at the time. They had just nominated Mike Dukakis, and there were a lot of outside elements involved in that race. But yes, my career did start with your help doing that.
But what happened? Hold on, people need to understand that the launch pad that wedding was for your career, which was you got a unknown candidate within 4 points of the incumbent entrenched congressman, who was suffering a little bad press of his own at that point due to the house check kiting scandal, as I recall. And
Memory, yes.
Yep. And you that got you on the map in Washington as this hot stuff young guy. And who was it, Barry, that tapped you on the shoulder after that and brought you under their wing? Who was that, Barry?
I then got picked up by a fellow by the name of Joe Gaylord. Joe is the former executive director of the National Republican Congressional Committee in Washington. He had since signed up with a backbencher by the name of Newt Gingrich to run his political campaign. So Joe needed help running this backbencher who wanted to move up in leadership. He was currently the whip of the Republican conference, and he wanted to move further. He said even back then, this is the 1991, that he wanted to be Speaker of the House someday. So I was part of the effort that got him into office. I ran his reelection campaigns while he was Speaker of the House, and I traveled everywhere with him when he was Speaker. We were in 142 congressional districts my last year with him, doing 4 cities a day, starting with a breakfast, a lunch, a reception, a dinner, and then we would fly to the next city where we'd start our next 4-day city or 4-day stop. So anyways, those were exciting times. And yeah, I guess you could take it back to that wedding. I haven't thought about that, but certainly
that's it. See,
all orbits go around you, Charles.
Exactly. Like it all comes back to me eventually. And if you don't think so, I'll prove it to you. But so I'll tell you what Newt Gingrich did, and I tell all my students all the time, everything is all about sales and marketing. 90% of business is sales and marketing. And Newt Gingrich did it right. And this is what's killing the Republicans right now, maybe even the Democrats, is that they don't have a product to sell, that they can pitch the same product to everybody. And Newt Gingrich figured it out with a contract with America. You could look at that and you knew, and it's like, okay, you want to get on Newt Gingrich's bandwagon, sign up for this contract, and I'll take you under my wing. And that's what made him the speaker, was because he had one distinct message that everybody could rally around, and that was it. And they have nothing like that right now. And we're going to move this discussion into what's going on right now with the House.
And Charles, I will tell you that we took quite a bit of heat for the contract. We had many different members come up and say, hold it. Bill Clinton is leaking oil here. I mean, we don't have to put anything up. We can just be the alternative party. And Newt's very strong belief is you have to stand for something. Yes. So he put it in Reader's Digest. He made it a perforated cut so that people could put it on their refrigerator, check off when, so that we held our word that it wasn't just a campaign tool or trick, but in fact, people could check the progress. And if they didn't like the progress or didn't feel like the contract was fulfilled, they could vote the Republicans out the next cycle. So yes, he did believe that. He did believe that you have to win with something in order to take the majority. And we were successful in that effort.
There's one more thing I want to talk about before we get to the current situation in our legislature up there. But you cannot say one way or the other what either party stands for right now. And, like you said, it was a positive message, whether you didn't like it or whether you liked it, but at least you could say, this is what I stand for. You cannot say that right now about either party. I mean, I'm not a fan of either party right now, I'll tell you. And I know you after all these years since my marriage, you are as jaded as they come, which I'm not surprised. You and I were roommates for years, and I know you, and then to see you all these years later, it's a tough. You got to see the inner workings of this beast, and you're standing to talk about it now. But man, who are these people, and who are we electing?
It's probably another podcast in a different but we really are at a difficult time to govern when the majority is as small as it is. As we'll get into this a little bit, it only takes 5 members to bring down a Speaker of the House. That is unprecedented. It's never happened before, and it's because we are a divided country. We are a very divided country, and therefore our representatives are divided also. So we just don't have a clear vision as a country. We don't have a clear vision legislatively or by party. So that leads you to the muck that we're in.
Is it easy to say Kevin McCarthy stood for nothing? He was just all about, he liked to have that office. He liked to have the title Speaker of the House. But what did he stand for? He would give up a little bit of everything just for him to stay in that position. He stood for nothing.
Yeah, we can talk a little further on this, but he kind of sealed his fate when he made a deal with the 5 or 6 that he could be vacated with just 1 vote.
Yeah,
that was a change in the House rules. Nancy Pelosi had it much harder to vacate the seat. So it's Shakespearean to some degree. You live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Yeah,
here.
Exactly.
So, he's out there, but we'll see. He believes. I mean, I think he's waiting in the wings to see what the conference comes up to. So, I mean, if you'd like, I can segue into that. Or
but before we do, before we do that, I gotta just ask you something that I've always thought about in hindsight. And back when you were with Newt, Clinton was in office, and there was a big change that came about. And you called me up one time and said, "Hey, they got this new thing, and Newt's telling me about it. And it's going to take the world by storm, and maybe we might want to get involved in it and get started with it." And I was newly married and trying to get going in my business, and I didn't quite get what it was that you were talking about at the time. But in hindsight, I think what you were referring to was the creation of political action committees, and that we could have been on the tip of the spear for starting PACs and raising money and putting money into it. Am I right in that? Was that what you were talking about back then?
It was. It was at the infancy of political action committees. Congress and the IRS ruled that you could, to a large extent, bundle money for the same interests, which became political action committees, and have since led to leadership committees, which is a whole different animal. But political action committees are the ability of employees to donate money out of their check. It's equivalent to kind of union taking money out of their checks and put them towards political activity. It is different than a 501c3 being an educational effort. Political action committees are just political. So Barry, that was early on. They probably need to be brought in a little bit, but it is part of our process now.
Barry, we would be filthy rich right now if we were the people that headed up those political action committees, and we would hate ourselves so much. So, as much as we hate PACs now. Jeez.
I remind you, they were not meant to enrich those who started them. They were really meant to try to put the best elected officials in office.
Who are you trying to kid, man? Who are you kidding? This is Washington we're talking about. Everything is about self-enrichment. So, all right, let's get started. Okay. That's folks. That was the introduction. That's to show you what we're talking. But we got to talk, Barry, about what's going on right now in Washington, because it is just it's a pigsty. It's the worst. And I remember one time, you took me to a junket, and you said, Charlie, let me tell you what's wrong with everything today. If you wanted to speak to your congressman, you'd have to pick up the phone and they will not take your call. Me, I could pick up the phone and be having lunch with your congressman today. And that's what it is like in Washington. You got to know it's the lobbying, the money, the control. You had more control or more power in Washington than most citizens, most constituents did, and that's the part of the problem we have right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's not as cut and dry as that. I mean, there are plenty of members' offices that that constituents are the first on the schedule. That is quite common in a lot of members' offices. I come in. I left politics and I ended up joining being an internal lobbyist for a corporation, and so I would make appointments. I would generally see staff, not necessarily the member, but the trip that I think you're referring to, I think we're in North Carolina on a trip, and when I would travel and do a trip and make a donation to a reelection campaign, I then would have tremendous access to a member of Congress. I would, either play golf or certainly have drinks or do something with them. And that is, the access that probably the constituent would not necessarily have, but the member, when back in their district, is doing town hall meetings or doing open office hours, that is available also for access for voters and constituents. So, it is just a little bit of a nuance, but there are plenty of offices that have constituents come in first, so it's not all run by internal lobbyists.
Okay, all right. Let's get into this House situation. Now, you obviously you made a comment here. Kevin McCarthy sitting in the background. I thought he's gone. He's going to get out of politics. That was my impression. Are you saying that he's kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with these votes?
Yeah, I think he's definitely waiting in the wings. Let me back up a little bit because there are only 3 times I think that we've had the motion to vacate the chair, and it was 1910 was the first one, 2015 against John Boehner, and 2023 just here this month. It is not something that is done very often. It used to be very difficult to get it done, that you needed a super majority of the party in power. But Kevin McCarthy did have those rules changed when he was elected on the 15th ballot to appease 6 or 7 members to put him over the top. So again, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. They came back. It was a matter of time before that happened. But Kevin McCarthy is waiting in the wings. It comes out of 9/11. On 9/11, a gaping flaw was seen in the House of Representatives, that there is no continuity of government. If in fact that plane would have reached the Capitol and taken out the Capitol and the leadership there was no continuity of government in the House of Representatives. So they came up with a secret list that the Speaker of the House would develop and then submit it to the Sergeant of Arms, and he would keep it under lock and key, and if ever needed, he would pull that out. So when Kevin McCarthy became Speaker of the House, he had to submit a list of 5 names. And the sergeant at arms would go through that list and start with the first name. But if that person was no longer available, he'd go to the second name and all that. That person then becomes the Speaker pro tem. And that's what we have in place right now with Patrick McHenry out of North Carolina. Patrick is currently also the chairman of the Financial Service Committee, oversees an awful lot of the work that your listeners care about. He is a good person. I don't know how long Patrick will stay in Congress. He has 2 little kids, and last time he and I were together, he indicated that he was ready to kind of move on. But this—
How many years has he been in for? Do you know?
Patrick's been in for 14 years.
Oh, okay, yeah, he's
14 years, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, that's a long time in Congress.
It is a long time, but to get the gavel, which he now has, of a very important committee, it takes that long to get up there, to rise up through the rank and file. So
yeah, but he's not being listed as a potential speaker among the names that have been bandied about right now, is he?
He is. He's out there as a consensus candidate.
Okay.
The belief is that neither of the 2 known candidates, Mr. Scalise from where am I? Louisiana,
Okay.
and Mr. Jordan from Ohio, neither one have the 111 votes in the conference that they need to be put forward as the Republican, the majority's candidate for Speaker. Neither one of them have it. They're only in the 20s to 30 endorsements. They need a lot more for this to happen. So last night, the members all got together. They flew in on Monday night, went to the basement of the Capitol, and I find it ironic. They had pulled pork sandwiches last night, and I just think the irony of having pork in the Capitol is too good to pass up. But anyways, they sat there. Apparently, Jordan and Scalise did not say a word while members came up. It got heated, especially towards the 5 members that removed McCarthy. McCarthy did not attend, but they agreed to meet again today at 5 p.m., at which time they will have kind of a little bit of a debate between the 2 leading candidates. Then they'll do another poll. They have a vote scheduled for the beginning of Wednesday, early Wednesday morning, to vote for a speaker. There are those in the conference that do not want to have that vote until the candidate has secured 217 votes out of the conference, so that there is no display like we had in January of 15 rounds.
Right. Exactly. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think that they're looking to change the rules back to a Nancy Pelosi-like style of governing?
I think definitely for the vacating of the rules.
Yeah.
The conference will, they'll have to change the House rules to do so, but the conference is in favor of that. They're trying not to let that issue hijack the election of a speaker right now. They want to get the speaker in and then have those debates of changing those rules back to make it difficult to vacate the chair after the speaker is already sworn in.
Yeah, you can't give these guys that power. You can't give a Matt Gaetz that type of power. He's loving it. Now, let me talk about Scalise and Jordan. So those are the 2 leading contenders right now, correct?
They are the leading contenders, but as I've pointed out, there are a couple in the wings that potentially are waiting to see how it comes together and if they could potentially be a consensus candidate.
I'll tell you, my living up here in New Hampshire, first in the state, I am getting inundated with political text messages and what have you, and one of the leading ones is from Jim Jordan, and he's appearing on my phone more than I've ever seen him before. But I remember back during when McCarthy was running, I was thinking, hey, I love Jim Jordan. I love watching him on YouTube, and the way he leads his committees. He's and the way he talks when he gets up there. He's a great speaker, and he's powerful and impactful. But he didn't want the job. He didn't want it. Okay, but now he wants it. So I could see him being the best guy to whip somebody like Matt Gaetz into shape and line him up. But I mean, 2 years ago, he didn't want the job. So what gives?
Well, I think a lot of folks feel that no one can do the job as well as they could.
Yeah.
And I think Jordan has had the gavel at the Judiciary Committee. He certainly has uncovered a number of things that he thinks are questionable that's going on in the administration.
Yeah.
And I think he wants to make sure that the leadership of the House is going to, continue to develop some of the leads that he has gotten. So, times change. It's an eternity. 2 years is an eternity in politics. So, I'm not surprised that happened. So, I don't think they'll get a speaker on Wednesday.
I was just going to ask you that. When's the time? When does this all come to a close?
Yeah, I think they will try hard to get it done by the end of the week. What is really pushing now is the Israeli situation. Members want to be helpful. They want to show that our country is united in helping our largest ally. And they want to be able to appropriate some money that will assist them both militarily and otherwise as soon as possible. So that is what's going to drive this speaker's race much more than the dysfunction that's in the House. These guys are at a 7% of job approval rating, probably, and that's being generous.
And dropping.
They don't necessarily have a problem with the chaos and how bad it looks across the world. They really just are looking out. Charles, a little bit. I was recently with Mr. Emmers from the great state of Minnesota. And he was telling me, he said, Barry, it's nothing like it was. He said, these folks are all individuals now. Everyone has their own brand. Everyone is racing off to try to get the next spot on Fox News or on Nation, that they're all trying to make a point or a gesture and then run off and build their brand and then fundraise off of it. So he said it's nothing like it used to be where you would get the majority of votes and then ask them to go along with leadership and vote that way. That can't happen anymore. It's all individuals. It's very hard to maintain a conference type environment.
It's crazy. I tell you, here's my take on it. Scalise is that inner workings, a kind of guy who probably worked almost like a John Boehner, where you didn't know who he was, you didn't know where he came from, but he had worked his way up. He'd become buddies with everybody, helping everybody get reelected. So within the House, he's got a strong name. But then outside, you see Jim Jordan is kind of more like a Newt Gingrich who gets in front of the camera. He speaks effectively. He can rally the constituents, and he's more of his face is out there and more known than a Scalise is. And so if I had to choose, I would love to see Jordan be Speaker of the House. I think they need someone like that who can speak back to the Democrats, and when they come looking for crazy stuff. So that's my take on it. That's my take.
I think that's very perceptive, because you do have an inside game and you have an outside game, and I think both of those candidates have their strengths in different areas. However, to be the Speaker of the House, you are to be the Speaker of the entire House. You are not just the Speaker of one party. You are to look for the welfare of the institution at all times. That is your number one charge as being the Speaker of the House. So that is hard if you're a partisan. And I was there, with Newt's adjustment. Newt went from a backbencher minority whip to overnight being Speaker of the House. He did not have the skill set to be the Speaker of the House initially. He had to learn the skills that were needed to be a Speaker, where you're the Speaker of the whole House. You're not just the Speaker of your party. So that would be a change for Jordan. He would have to learn how to be a Speaker for the entire House of Representatives. And Scalise has that. Is well respected, as many of you know and remember that he was on a softball field and almost lost his life.
Yeah, took a couple bullets.
Yeah, and now he has been diagnosed with a blood cancer disease.
Oh, jeez.
And he will ultimately have to go through some bone marrow transplant stuff. But he's had his adversity. He fights through it. He's a good, solid guy. I think even on the Democratic side, they enjoy working with him. He has reached over to try to get some meaningful legislation done. So he is an inside game. I think Jordan would have some difficulties initially. Doesn't mean he couldn't learn the skills that are needed, but he would have some problems adjusting to being Speaker of the House.
That was great stuff, Barry. That's very cool inside baseball. I'll tell you, I read the Tip O'Neill's book, I think before Newt Gingrich became Newt Gingrich, and I'll tell you, the way Tip O'Neill became the Speaker of the Massachusetts House was just showed what a great mind that guy had for politics, where he was the leader of the minority party in the House in Massachusetts. And, the Republicans had ruled Massachusetts since the Pilgrims came over, and never had the Democrats had a majority. And Tip O'Neill gets in there as the minority, and he says, we're going to do it this year. This is going to be our year. And all he did, he went to, I don't know how many districts are in Massachusetts. He put a candidate in place in every single district, so that there would be an alternative. Because in some years there had never even been an alternative to the Republicans in some districts. And Tip O'Neill went out there and put a candidate in every single district, and then they become a majority. And guess who gets elected Speaker of the House? Tip O'Neill does, because they all know him. They all know who he is. And that's the type of thing that Newt Gingrich, I think, really did, is he made sure that there was a player in every district. And that made him the Speaker of the House, which was so brilliant from a political standpoint.
All boats rise. I mean, if you have enough boats in the water and the water goes up, all boats will rise. And that's kind of what happened there. But so I would just say to your listeners, Charlie, I mean, it's kind of an inside crazy family laundry that needs to be gone through a little bit there with the Republican Party right now. But I would say that hopefully by the end of the week, there is a leader of the House, and that leader can get together with the president, and we can speak in one voice and try to be helpful in the chaos that's going on over there in Israel.
Oh yeah. Okay. So let's flip it from the House. Now let's talk about the presidential races, because that's starting to heat up too. And that's kind of what I would love to get your take.
That's a lot clearer.
Except for one man. Joe Biden has no idea what's going on. So, but first up, who's running this country? Who's making the decisions in this country? Because there's no possible way he is doing it. There's no possible. And what do we have? A committee, a president, president of committees that runs everything. Is there somebody in the DNC that's pulling all the strings? We didn't elect that person. I mean, we elected a guy who's not all there. What's going on?
Well, I think there's. I think that it's a very complicated process. We I've said to more and more people about, the way that the Hill operates is that, sometimes there are member-driven offices where the member is the focal point. They were elected, and staff runs absolutely everything through the member. Nothing gets done out of that office without the member having the final say.
Yeah.
Then there are staff-driven offices. There are members that don't read the bills or even know what to do until a staff tells them on the way to the floor, you're going to vote nay on this, or
Right.
you're going to vote yay on this. Those are staff-driven offices. We have a staff-driven White House right now.
Yeah.
I mean, for good or for bad, that is the management style that President Biden has here right now. And that is who's running the country. That is, and that's what happens in congressional offices also is, that chief of staff is the most valuable person in that office, even more so than the member to a large degree.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of what you have going on now is a very staff-driven White House. And they're trying to, it's a crazy world when you're trying to juggle the domestic issues that are going on here with the economy and other aspects of our domestic issues. But and then you have the world heating up around you on a whole bunch of fronts, which I've listed a little bit to some people that we're going to now have a Israeli conflict. We have a Ukrainian conflict. We have our southern border, which is a conflict or an issue that needs to be dealt with domestically here. And then you have a Taiwan conflict that is coming. And if people don't understand the importance of Taiwan, look at everything that runs on chips, that run on sophisticated computer chips. If China, feeling that we are at a weak point and we have too many fronts open, and now would be the time to go in and finally take Taiwan over, we would be flat-footed. We would not be able to. So what we have been trying to do for the last 18 months is get them the military equipment and get them the training that they need to at least hold China back for the first 72 hours of a conflict so that we could get a carrier into the region and try to help them. But that is coming. They have been waiting to see what the world would do in Ukraine. And I think that put them on their back foot a little bit. But I think this new Israeli conflict opens up a whole new possibility that we could have another front over there. So I digressed a little bit, Charlie, but that's kind of where, or Charles, that's where I think a lot of the foreign policy issues that the White House is dealing with, in addition to the domestic issues of trying to get a handle on inflation. And, I know your folks on this podcast, I think you're going to see a CR that expires here November 17th, I believe it is.
Well, okay, for everybody listening, that's a congressional resolution. That's what they just passed. That's what got Kevin McCarthy kicked out of office, was because he kept the government running for another month. That's the CR. So
that's right. That's right. And the government's supposed to pass 12 appropriation bills, both the Senate and the House. And that becomes how the federal government is funded. And they need to do that by the end of September, the end of the fiscal year for the government, so that on October 1st, they have a budget to work with. We've not been able to do that in a number of years. In fact, the Senate Appropriations Committee passed all 12, but they never were brought to the floor of the Senate. So those bills never went anywhere. The House never got through their 12 appropriation bills. So the CR happened that kept the government open. It's good until November 17th. I think you will then have another CR that will take you into the early part of February. And then either they will get their act together. I doubt it in an election year that they will. I think there will be a third CR that will take them through the election and then let the new Congress deal with a new budget.
Wow.
for your folks does not bode well, because you're not going to see any major economic or interest changes in that period of time. If anything, one thing that could happen is you could have a White House pressure on the Fed to maybe try to ease things a little bit going into an election, to just show a little more strength in the economy. But I don't see that. I don't think they have a handle on this economic situation yet. I think inflation is still out there,
Yeah,
and people are suffering because of it.
I agree. There's talk about a quarter percent interest bump with the Feds, and that'll do it. That'll be the end of it. Then that's all that we need to get inflation under control. Listen, you keep ratcheting it up a quarter percent. Sooner or later, you know, the lobster boils and it's done. And that's what's going to happen in this economy. If we keep, we have to keep increasing this interest rate from the Feds. It's going to cost so many other parts of the economy so much money. It'll be just devastating. So the Feds have really got to just sit back and be patient. Let their last salvo sit for a while before they start increasing the interest rates, because Barry, in my world, I'm already seeing those gurus, those multifamily gurus are out there telling you that you could just keep overpaying for properties because multifamily values never go down. Those guys they can't sleep at night right now because their properties are on the auction block or will be soon. As I said to one student, I said, you can buy that property at what you're paying for it, but I'll tell you right now, you're not going to sell it because you will not own it much longer. And it's everything I said is time. I totally saw this coming. It happened to me back in 2008, and it's happening again. And you just got to learn from your mistakes. So anyway, let's get back to the presidential election. So I got to tell you, Barry, right now, my favorite candidate, and you always, I can tell by, I've known you long enough, I can tell by the look in your face when I say these crazy things. This is not your, look at, he's doing it to me right now. So actually what happened is his camera froze. But my my lead candidate, who has no chance of going anywhere, is RFK Jr. RFK Jr.
Who made a interesting piece on the board, a move yesterday on the board, and dropped out of the Democratic primary to be an independent. So that changes, I think, on the Democratic side. I think it's ironic. You have to go back to his uncle Teddy, who challenged Ford. Who challenged Carter. And that Kennedy dynamic back then that caused Jimmy Carter a lot of heartburn. He's going to do the same for Joe Biden, I would think, with this latest move. They can't just put him in a box, as they were going to do and have been doing, I think, for the convention and delegates. He now plays outside of that.
Yeah.
And, kind of has to do his own thing now, but with that.
Okay, now hold on a second. Just clarification here, because this is a little thing that I'm not quite familiar with, or I don't remember it. Are you saying that? Well, I remember when Ted Kennedy got asked that question. I think it was Roger Mudd that asked him the question, like, "Why do you want to be president?" And he did the old hemina, 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 and that killed his election. Are you saying that? Refresh my memory. Kennedy came back after Carter had been president for a term and kind of was threatening to challenge him in the primary. Is that what was going on before Reagan? Or are you talking about before Carter was elected?
It was before Carter.
Okay.
You're right about this, Charlie. I'm trying to think now. No, he challenged Carter, I think, for the reelect.
I see. That's what I'm wondering.
Challenge for the reelect, and then Carter lost to Reagan.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there was a little dabbling in there where Kennedy was like, okay, 4 years later, now I'm ready to be president. I mean, now I know the answer to that question. Ask me again. And but that obviously, like you said, it weakened Carter, and Reagan was able to beat him.
So Charlie, I don't know if your listeners or you are aware of this, but the DCCC met 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. They passed a resolution that no candidate could campaign in Iowa or New Hampshire, and if they did, they would lose those delegates that were assigned to them through either the caucus isn't happening in Iowa for the Democrats this cycle, but New Hampshire, you would lose those delegates. Plus, you would be penalized going into South Carolina.
Yeah.
So they wanted to send a very clear message that they will not take any third party or I mean, any second person vying for the nomination. So he really didn't have a choice. He was not going to. They basically were saying to him, "You have to, fold up your camp or leave," and that's what he did. So he did the right thing to stay alive, and I think he does have a following on the Democratic side, and will keep the White House on their feet.
Now, folks, for those of you listening, if you want to see how rigged the primary system is, if you get Wall Street Journal online, just go in there and do a search on RFK Jr. Primaries. Just search those words. RFK wrote an opinion piece for the Wall Street Journal that explains exactly how the system is rigged against him and any other Democratic contender, so that Biden has already been chosen to be the candidate for the Democrats in the next election. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And somebody made a very interesting comment in a letter to the editor in a follow-up to that piece, where he said, this is going back to the old smoke-filled back rooms of politics, where it's already been decided by somebody else, not by the voters. The whole purpose of the primary system is to allow the people to choose their candidates. And with this system, the way that the Democrats have rigged it now, we're going back in time to the way it used to be, which is really, really interesting that that the Democrats are being very undemocratic in this process.
So, Charlie, let me also you asked about the presidential as a whole. Will Hurd just dropped out yesterday on the Republican side.
Don, Barry, I never even got to meet him, and he's already gone. I don't even know who he is.
He was a great member from San Antonio, Texas area.
Okay.
He's a former FBI agent. He headed up the Intel committee when
That's
he was
the first strike against him. Go on, keep going.
He headed up the Intel committee when he was in the House. He honestly one of the smartest members that we had on the Hill. He was a great loss, I think, when he left. He went to the private sector, and then he decided to run for president because he just felt, like so many on the stage also feel that we just need an alternative message. So he stepped out of it. So now we're back down, I think, to the dirty dozen. We have 12 on the stage that are still going. I just looked before we started this podcast. Clear Politics has Trump up 57. DeSantis is at 12. Nikki Haley's at 7. I'm going to screw Swami, I have that wrong. Okay. He's at 5.
I don't know his name.
He's at 5.8. Pence is at 3. Christie's at 2. Tim Scott's at 2. So
okay. Tim Scott is a really nice guy. I met him. He's a very nice guy, not presidential material. Chris Christie is just doing anything he possibly can to be a contender for the attorney general's position, because there's no possible way that guy could ever win president. He hasn't done it last couple of times. He's not going to do it now. Who else did you give me there? Who else? Oh God, Mike Pence. Just that guy is as creepy as they come. Just tell him to go home. And the only reason why he's up there is because it was Trump's VP, and he's trying to redeem himself. Mike Pence is creep in a stick. I'd vote for Joe Biden before I'd vote for Mike Pence. That guy's creepy. Nikki Haley, I absolutely love. I love her. She would be the perfect. Why she's got 7 points right now is only because you get the dirty dozen. I mean, eventually those votes are going to have to go somewhere. They're going to congeal in that next lead candidate, and then Trump's numbers are going to come back down to reality, and he's going to have to contend with another strong voice. And I'll tell you, DeSantis, yawn. Oh, the guy is just. I mean, when his, you know how they always say there's always some event that destroys a person's time. And for George Bush against Bill Clinton, it was during the debate when he looked at his watch. That's what killed him. With DeSantis, what killed DeSantis is when the debate, the foreman for the debate asked a question and show of hands, and you could see DeSantis look to left, look to his right to see, and then he raised his hand, like waited to see how everybody else was voting. The same thing I used to do in class whenever I waited to see what everybody else was doing.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So, I think that's where it is. We don't have another debate until it's in Miami, and it's after the first of the year. Oh no, it's November. It's in November. November 8th in Florida, in Miami. So you're not going to have much movement there. You have the Iowa caucus is January 15th. I will tell you, I was with some Iowa operatives yesterday.
Will you stop? Will you just? I don't think that's appropriate. Stop calling your wife an Iowa operative. Okay?
No,
that's where you met her.
These are actually real paid operatives. We were talking about the Iowa caucus out there a little bit, and I'll tell you, 3 of them said the same thing, that Trump is taking it for granted. He doesn't have the operation out there, is not doing the retail politics that is needed in Iowa. If they haven't met you 3 or 4 times, they don't know you. And he's kind of using it as a flyover right now, and that could really come back to haunt him and open up a vein for one of the other folks going into New Hampshire. So there are certain things you got to do, and one of them is you've got to do retail politics in Iowa if you want to come out of Iowa with any hope of going into New Hampshire. And then New Hampshire is a whole different animal, as you guys can attest to up there. But so anyways, that was interesting. I don't know if that's people's hope that I was talking to, or is it a reality? Yeah. But he is up 57% right now. So
let me ask you this: what? Because you probably know better than I do, and it's my own home state. What's going on in the Democratic primary, where like South Carolina is new the fair-haired child for being first in the nation? I mean, New Hampshire has a law that says our primary is always 2 weeks before the first guy. I mean, we are by law have to be the first, and the Democrats are telling us to go pound sand. So what's happening with that?
The Democrats coming out of the last election felt that the way that the campaigns start, they were starting in states that were technically, too Caucasian, too.
Right.
Iowa does not represent the nation, and why should they have such a big voice in how the presidential race starts? And because it oftentimes does negatively affect if you underperform in Iowa. it's hard. Your money begins to dry up, and you end up going into New Hampshire, and you have to kind of rebound a little bit. So that was the feeling. This all goes back to Joe Biden was kind of dead, as you recall, and then goes into South Carolina and ends up winning South Carolina. So they are very favorable towards South Carolina, and many of the members of Congress of South Carolina who came to his aid to pull him out.
Oh,
so
right. That guy. Yeah.
there was a little bit of a reshuffling of the deck is what they wanted to do to make South Carolina more prominent in the lineup. So
basically what you're trying to tell me, is that even with just his name on the Democratic side, they still think he's going to lose Iowa and New Hampshire. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the inside of what they're thinking, but I their feeling was more of a PR viewpoint, was that they wanted to show that they were a party that was going to be more inclusive and have different voices, as opposed to more voices coming out of Iowa and New Hampshire.
Yeah. All right. Hey, listen, man, this was a good talk. And Barry, I want to have you back, but we have to check the numbers. We have to see how the election results are. But we have to see how many podcast downloads we have to see if you're going to win a spot back on the next debate stage in a month. And that way you come back with us, and we find out the latest update. And believe me, over this next month, wow, how much you want to bet over this next month? So many things happen that just impact our world. And I know that we're a multifamily podcast, but all of this stuff affects us. And it's crazy how it does, and I hate it. I always tell the story about my father, who was in politics. He ran for office, but as he got older, he got more jaded, and he would always joke. He would walk into the office the day after a national election and say, "Hey, everybody, who won?" And everybody would laugh, and everybody say, "Oh, yeah, very funny. You know who won." But he was making a point. And the point was that I don't care who won. My day is going to be exactly the same as it would have been no matter who won a race. I still have to get up and take care of my family and get to work. And, that's kind of my attitude now, but it still is. There's so much going on. This is the pace of this world is so much faster than anything we ever knew. It's crazy.
Charles, I'd be more than happy to come back from time to time if you need that or would like that. There is an awful lot. A lot of people think, oh, it doesn't matter what happens in Washington. It does matter. I mean, when we start defaulting on our debt, when we shut down, which is always a possibility here in November, and I think the moving landscape of how the campaigns are coming together, and I think that's all important to your listeners and your industry, because you want to have the right people with their hands on the levers that make a difference to your industry.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest change that you all need right now, is to change the people that have their hands on the lever.
So, folks, if you want him back in a month, let me know, because if you don't, he's still going to be my best bud. We're still going to be friends. We love playing golf together. My son loves playing golf with you, Barry. The two guys, my son and his buddy played against Barry and me this past weekend, and you think he's got the gift of gab here. You should see him try to explain some golf games to these youngsters. Like, okay, so this is how we're going to do it. You're going to get 2 points on every hole, blah, 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 and and the kids' heads are spinning. They have no idea what hit them, and they can't understand why they're scoring better than we are, but they're still losing. they're still losing the points. I said, welcome to Barry's world.
And they
folks.
couldn't Google it, so they had no idea what to do. They
Exactly.
they had to try to think through the game that I proposed.
There
And
was
nowhere for them to find more information. So
exactly, because it exists nowhere but in your brain.
it was
So,
all good. All good.
It was
Well,
great. It was-
I thank you. This has been so much fun, and I'm always available and happy to give you a little bit of a clearer view of what's happening here as we make sausage.
Cool. All right, Barry, thank you so much for being on my show. Everybody, this has been the Voices from the Hill of episode. Hopefully it's going to be a monthly episode where we get to talk to my buddy Barry, and we find out what's going on in Washington and how it's impacting our lives. And this is where you get the inside baseball stuff, not the stuff you see on the liberal press or the Fox News. This is where, and Barry, I want to hear more stories, more congressman stories. Not like that junket that you took me on down to Asheville. The first junket you took me on was to the RNC. But that'll be next month's story, because I'll give you my my impressions as the kid from New Hampshire
Was that a New York convention?
New York City.
New York City.
Yeah.
Okay.
John Boehner, I think, was a Speaker of the House. Yeah, that was interesting. That was wow.
That's for another day, another podcast, another day.
Exactly. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all here next week. Talk to you soon.
But thank you, Charlie.